Countless centuries ago, a promise echoed from the heavens, made to a man named Abraham. It was not a mere covenant, it was a divine seed cast into time, destined to shape kings, raise empires, and write the destiny of a nation that did not yet exist. From this promise would emerge 12 lineages, 12 tribes, each carrying a name of eternal weight, a story engraved in the memory of God, a mission that would span ages. But the centuries are relentless. Over time, these tribes scattered to the winds of history. They were destroyed, lost, erased from maps and human chronicles, as if the earth itself had swallowed them. Yet, the echo of their names never fell silent. Who, after all, were the 12 tribes of Israel? Why were they chosen among all peoples? What role did they play in holy wars, in the crowns of kings, and in eternal covenants? And why did so many of them vanish, leaving only traces in the shadows of prophecy? The book of Genesis preserves the list of names that gave rise to everything. The sons of Jacob, the man God renamed Israel: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Joseph, and Benjamin. 12 men, 12 banners raised under the same sky, 12 destinies shaped by a covenant that transcends time. They were not merely patriarchs, they were living symbols of an alliance between heaven and earth. And that alliance did not end with them. It runs through the sacred pages, from Canaan to exile, from Genesis to Revelation, for there in chapter 7 they appear again, 12,000 from each tribe, sealed for the end of times. What you are about to hear is not an ancient chronicle. It is the revelation of a mystery that has pulsed for millennia and may now be unfolding before our very eyes. It all began with a voice, a command from the invisible. Leave your land, your relatives, and your father's house, and go to the land I will show you. Thus God called a man, Abram, still a resident of Ur of the Chaldeans, and he departed, without a map, without certainty, guided only by faith in a promise. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless your name, and through you all the families of the earth will be blessed. But the promise seemed impossible. Abraham grew old, and Sarah, his wife, was barren. Years passed, and hope seemed to fade, until, when all seemed lost, God fulfilled his word. Isaac was born, the child of the promise, the beginning of an eternal lineage. Isaac fathered Jacob, and with Jacob, the destiny of the promise began to take shape. On a solitary night, on the edge of the unknown, Jacob wrestled with a mysterious being until the break of dawn. Wounded, yet unyielding, he declared, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And the angel replied, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and you have prevailed." From that moment, the name Israel became more than a man. It became a people. And from his 12 sons arose the 12 tribes, each marked by a prophetic purpose, destined to carry the inheritance of the promise made to Abraham. What had begun as a simple promise whispered in the desert now took shape before the eyes of history. A people was emerging, chosen, set apart, shaped by the hands of God, destined to be a light among the nations, and at the same time, to bear the weight of an eternal covenant. The tribes of Israel were about to be born, and with them, the unfolding of a plan that would span centuries. Jacob, the man who wrestled with God and prevailed, had 12 sons, but his household was far from a home of peace. From 4 women, Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah, came the patriarchs of the tribes. It was no ordinary family. It mirrored humanity in its rawest state: rivalries, jealousies, love, and betrayal. Each son came into the world bearing a name loaded with meaning, born from the pains, hopes, and prayers of their mothers. The firstborn was Reuben, son of Leah. Then came Simeon, Levi, and Judah, also Leah's sons. Bilhah, Rachel's servant, bore Dan and Naphtali. Zilpah, Leah's servant, bore Gad and Asher. Later, Leah bore Issachar and Zebulun. And finally, Rachel, Jacob's beloved, gave birth to Joseph and Benjamin, the sons of her heart. Reuben was the firstborn, But Joseph was the favorite. Jacob saw something different in him, a reflection of the woman he loved and the echo of the promise he carried. For this reason, he gave Joseph a long, colorful tunic, a royal garment, a symbol of honor and distinction. But that tunic, brilliant to the eyes, ignited a dark fire in the hearts of his brothers. Joseph dreamed, and his dreams were no ordinary visions. He dreamed of sheaves of wheat bowing to his, and later of the sun, the moon, and 11 stars prostrating themselves before him. When he shared these dreams, his brothers' envy turned into rage. Hatred sprouted, and soon that hatred became a plan. One ordinary day, Jacob sent Joseph to the fields to check on his brothers, but when they saw him from afar, they said, "Here comes the dreamer. Let's kill him and see what becomes of his dreams." Instead of blood, they chose profit. They threw him into a dry cistern and soon after sold him to passing Ishmaelite merchants crossing the desert. The beloved son became a slave, dragged into Egypt, a land of strange gods and relentless power. There, Joseph was purchased by Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. And even in a foreign land, God was with him. Everything he touched prospered, but human justice is fragile. A false accusation by Potiphar's wife sent him into the depths of prison, forgotten, silenced, far from home, far from the promise. Yet even in the darkness, God's presence accompanied him. Joseph interpreted dreams, a gift given by the Almighty, and one day, Pharaoh himself was tormented by visions that no one could explain. Then they remembered the Hebrew prisoner in the shadows. Joseph was summoned before the king and revealed, 7 years of abundance will come upon the land, followed by 7 years of famine. Impressed, Pharaoh elevated the slave to the position of governor. The prisoner became the ruler of the most powerful nation on earth. Years passed, and the famine came, not only to Egypt, but also to the land of Canaan. Joseph's brothers came seeking food, unaware that the man before them was the same one they had betrayed. They bowed before him, fulfilling the dreams of so many years ago. But Joseph sought no revenge. He wept, he forgave, he revealed his identity, and he sent for his father and the entire family. Thus, Israel, Jacob, descended to Egypt, and a new chapter in the history of the chosen people began. Before he died, Jacob blessed each of his sons, and when he came to Joseph, he did something unexpected. He adopted Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, as his own. "They shall be mine," he said. Thus, Joseph would become 2 tribes in a single inheritance, and the sacred number 12 would remain, even when one tribe was removed from the count. The cycle was complete, and the tribes were formed. But the story of the people of Israel was only beginning. Yet this mystery had not yet finished being told. What God began with Joseph was only starting to unfold, and its consequences would span ages. Joseph was the rejected who became savior, the forgotten who became ruler. His story was more than a personal triumph. It was the reflection of a heavenly purpose. The dream he carried had never been his alone, but God's dream for an entire people. In Egypt, Jacob's family prospered. The people of Israel grew, multiplied, and became strong. What began with 70 souls transformed into a nation. But over time, Egypt changed. A new Pharaoh arose, a ruler who knew neither Joseph nor the goodness of God. And what had once been refuge became prison. The chosen people were reduced to slavery. More than 4 centuries of pain and silence, bricks, chains, whips, men without names, women without voices, generations born under the weight of servitude. It seemed as though heaven had fallen silent. But God never forgets his promises. In a distant desert, in Midian, a bush burned without being consumed. And from the midst of the fire, a voice called, "Moses, I have seen the affliction of my people and have come down to deliver them." Moses, the Hebrew raised as a prince, exiled as a fugitive, would now become the liberator. God sent him before Pharaoh's throne, and Egypt was shaken by plagues. rivers turned to blood, swarms of locusts, thick darkness, and finally, the death of the firstborn. And at last, Pharaoh yielded. Israel departed hastily, guided by a pillar of fire. But before the sea, the path seemed to end. The enemy army approached, and despair gripped the people. Then the impossible happened. The Red Sea parted, and the people crossed on dry ground. When the Egyptians tried to follow, the waters closed over them. Freedom, however, came accompanied by trial. In the desert, God revealed his law, 10 commandments inscribed by his own divine finger. Yet the same people who heard the voice of the Eternal also rebelled against him. Murmuring, idolatry, disobedience. An entire generation would die before seeing the promised land. Only 2 men of that generation would set foot in Canaan: Caleb of the tribe of Judah and Joshua of the tribe of Ephraim. Joshua was chosen as Moses' successor, a warrior of faith filled with the Spirit of God. Under his command, the walls of Jericho fell, kings were defeated, and the promise began to be fulfilled. Finally, the time of inheritance arrived. The lands of Canaan were divided among the tribes, each name a border, each territory a destiny. Yet there was a secret within the map. The tribe of Levi, set apart by God for the priesthood, would not receive a portion of land like the others. Their inheritance would be service in the temple, sustained by the offerings of the other tribes. To maintain the sacred number 12, the descendants of Joseph were divided between his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Thus the number remained complete, 12 names engraved upon the promised land: Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh. 12 banners waving under the same sky. 12 lineages representing eternal promises. 12 paths that would become the backbone of Israel's history. But unity was fragile. What God had planted in glory would soon face the shadow of division, war, and forgetfulness. The story of the tribes was far from over. Before he died, Jacob called each of his sons and blessed them. But his words were more than blessings. They were prophecies, revelations of the character and destiny of each tribe. Reuben, the firstborn, heard, "You are my firstborn, yet unstable as water. You shall not excel." His impulsiveness had dishonored him, and his tribe, though blessed, would lose its leadership. Simeon and Levi, united by the sword, were rebuked for their violence. "Let my soul not enter into their counsel," declared Jacob. They had destroyed an entire city in vengeance for their sister. For this reason, Simeon would be absorbed by Judah, and Levi scattered among the tribes, but transformed into a blessing. From judgment came holiness. The Levites became priests, the guardians of the temple. Judah received the royal blessing: "The scepter shall not depart from Judah." From his lineage would come David, and centuries later, the promised Messiah. Judah would become the most powerful tribe in the south, the spiritual heart of Israel. Dan, on the other hand, was called a serpent by the roadside. His history would be stained by early idolatry, a venom spreading silently among the tribes, drawing the people away from the God who had freed them. In the book of Revelation, something curious occurs. The tribe of Dan simply disappears from the list of the sealed. The name that once represented strength and inheritance is now omitted, like an echo of a story marked by deviation and idolatry. Naphtali, in contrast, was likened to a free gazelle, a symbol of lightness and expression. The northern territory once belonging to him would become the stage for miracles centuries later, when the Messiah himself would walk those lands, fulfilling ancient prophecies. "The Galilee of the Gentiles shall see a great light." Gad, Asher, and Issachar inherited fertile lands to the east and north. Gad became a warrior people. Asher prospered in wealth and abundance of bread, and Issachar was described as a strong donkey, laborious, constant, yet sometimes oppressed. Peoples who toiled the land with sweat, carrying the weight of the nation. Zebulun dwelt by the sea. His land reached the shipping routes, a territory of ports and trade, a link among nations. Benjamin, the youngest son, was described by Jacob as a ravenous wolf, fierce in battle, untamable. From this tribe came legendary warriors, King Saul, and centuries later, the Apostle Paul. Yet even so, their story would be marked by tragedies, civil wars, and near annihilation. Ephraim and Manasseh, the sons of Joseph, received vast portions of land. Ephraim grew in power and became the center of the northern kingdom, yet also a symbol of the infidelity and idolatry that would stain Israel. Manasseh, divided on both sides of the Jordan, lived through spiritual highs and lows, reflecting the oscillation of the entire nation. The tribes were established, their borders drawn, their inheritances sealed. But Jacob's blessing was more than a testament, it was a prophetic map. Every word spoken at the edge of death revealed not only the destiny of a clan, but the spiritual path of a nation. Even with eternal promises, Israel began to stumble. The chosen people strayed, and what had been created as a single voice before heaven began to fragment. The same soil that had united 12 tribes would soon become the stage for war, idolatry, and division. And thus begins a new chapter in the story, the time when Israel's unity unraveled, and 10 of the 12 tribes mysteriously vanished from the land and from the memory of men. After the conquest of Canaan, the people lived under the judges, men and women raised by God to deliver and govern. Yet dissatisfaction grew. They wanted a king, like the other nations. Then came Saul, of the tribe of Benjamin, imposing, valiant, but disobedient. And God rejected him. In his place, he raised David, of the tribe of Judah, the shepherd who faced giants and unified the people under a single banner. After David, his son Solomon reigned, wise, prosperous, and builder of the temple. Under him, Israel reached the peak of glory. Gold flowed, borders expanded, and the presence of God dwelt among the cherubim. But when Solomon died, the glory began to fade. His son Rehoboam inherited the throne, but not the wisdom. He rejected the counsel of the elders and oppressed the people with taxes and forced labor. The response was immediate. 10 of the 12 tribes rebelled. Under the leadership of Jeroboam, of the tribe of Ephraim, they established the northern kingdom, called Israel. Only Judah and Benjamin remained faithful to David's house, forming the southern kingdom, Judah. But the division was not only political, it was spiritual. The northern kingdom broke away from Jerusalem, from the temple, and from the worship of the true God. Jeroboam set up 2 golden calves, one in Dan and another in Bethel, proclaiming to the people, "These are your gods, O Israel." Idolatry spread like fire through dry straw. Prophets were persecuted, faithful priests silenced. And the northern tribes sank ever deeper into an abyss of sin and corruption, a path that would lead them to oblivion. While the northern kingdom drowned in corruption and idolatry, the southern kingdom endured, sustained by an ancient promise made to David. Yet even Judah, guardian of the temple and the royal line, was not immune to decay. Unjust kings arose, God's house was profaned, and the faith that once guided the people was consumed by indifference. Justice was silenced, the sacred was sold, and the glory of the past began to vanish like ashes carried by the wind. What began with 12 brothers, sons of the same promise, had now become 2 kingdoms in conflict, divided by pride, vanity, and disobedience. Unity had been broken, and with it, the heart of the nation. But judgment would come, inevitable, and when it did, it would leave marks that would echo through generations. The northern kingdom, led by Ephraim and composed of 10 tribes, plunged completely into the darkness of idolatry. Altars were erected to foreign gods, and the name of the God of Israel was forgotten amidst pagan incense. Prophets arose, Elijah, Elisha, Amos, Hosea, crying out for repentance, yet their voices were drowned by pride and sin. The people hardened their hearts, and the covenant was broken. Then came judgment. In 722 BC, the roar of Assyria echoed over the hills of Samaria. The cruelest empire of its time besieged the northern kingdom. Walls fell, Blood ran through the streets, and the people were torn from their land. Men, women, and children were taken captive, scattered among foreign nations, separated from one another, without homeland, without identity. Thus the 10 northern tribes disappeared. They never returned. The Bible records that Assyria brought pagan peoples to inhabit the ruins of Israel. The ancient Israelites, forced into exile, were assimilated among the foreigners. They married, adopted new languages, new traditions. Their faith dissolved, their memories faded. Over the centuries, they became invisible to history, as smoke carried by the wind, with no one knowing whence it came. These are the so-called 10 lost tribes of Israel, a mystery that spans time. Some believe they were extinguished as a nation. Others think that survivors migrated to distant lands, among the mountains of Persia, the valleys of India, or even to faraway regions of Africa and the Americas. Some say that their descendants still live among the nations, unaware of the origin of the blood that flows in their veins. But there is something deeper. For though men have forgotten them, God has never abandoned them. In the book of Ezekiel, the prophet sees a mysterious vision, 2 staffs, one with the name of Judah, the other with the name of Ephraim and the tribes of Israel. And God commands, "Join them together in your hand, and they shall become one." An ancient promise, an echo of restoration. One day, the divided people will become one, and this promise reappears in Revelation chapter 7, when John sees the sealed, 12,000 from each tribe of Israel, preserved for the end of times. But there is an enigmatic detail. The tribe of Dan is not there. And curiously, Joseph appears again as a single name, taking the place previously divided between Ephraim and Manasseh. A sign of mystery and judgment, as if God himself had reshaped the destiny of the tribes according to his justice and grace. The 10 tribes may have disappeared from human narrative, but never from the divine plan. They remain alive in prophecy. In the shadows of history, God preserves them, invisible to the eyes of the world, yet kept for the time of restoration. In another vision, in Ezekiel chapter 37, the prophet is led to a valley full of dry bones. God asks, "Son of man, can these bones live?" And before his eyes, the bones come together, are covered with flesh, and receive the breath of life. Then the Lord reveals, "These bones are the whole house of Israel." Not only Judah, not only Benjamin, but the whole house, including the lost tribes. And once again God commands, "Take one staff and write upon it for Judah. Then take another and write upon it for Joseph, the staff of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel. Join them together, so that they may become one staff in your hand." One day, what was broken will be restored. The scattered people will gather again, and what was divided will once more stand as one before God. In the book of Revelation, when John sees the 144,000 sealed, he mentions 12,000 from each tribe of Israel. Ancient names forgotten by time are spoken again. They are being sealed, spiritually set apart, marked for a divine purpose in the last days. They are part of God's eschatological plan, the fulfillment of a promise that began millennia ago. But there is a mystery. In the list in Revelation, the tribe of Dan is absent. Many scholars see this as a reflection of their ancient idolatry and rebellion. Meanwhile, Joseph, who was once divided between Ephraim and Manasseh, reappears unified, as if God himself restores in the end what sin had fragmented. The story of the tribes of Israel did not end with exile. They were scattered, yes, but never erased, forgotten by men, but not by God. The same God who promised Abraham an innumerable offspring is still gathering his people, step by step, even if the world does not perceive it. Today, Jews are scattered across all nations. Some preserve their roots, others, unknowingly, carry the blood of the promise. Yet the covenant remains alive. Jesus said, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." He came to seek what was lost, to restore what was broken. And in the end times, the gathering of the tribes will be a sign, a call to unity, a prelude to the coming kingdom, when the Messiah will reign over all peoples. The story of the tribes is not merely a record of the past, it is living prophecy. For the God who called each name is still calling them, and soon they will return. 12 names etched in time, 12 lineages chosen by God. A promise that began with a man under the stars, crossed the desert, blossomed in a promised land, split into 2 kingdoms, and was swallowed by the silence of history. They were enslaved in Egypt, freed by Moses, led by Joshua, crowned by David, corrupted by idols, divided by kings, and finally scattered by empires. 10 tribes were lost to the winds of history, like leaves falling in autumn. Yet the breath of God still knows them, and one day He will bring them back. The Bible begins with these tribes, and it ends with them. In Revelation, their names are sealed, remembered, exalted. They are intertwined with the end times, with the plan of redemption, with the final manifestation of God's glory. Perhaps today you look around and see only a world in chaos, nations at war, religions in conflict, peoples forgotten. But in the eyes of God, there is an invisible line, connecting all of this to the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Promises that speak of restoration, of return, of a king who will come. Time is running, and what once seemed only an ancient story may be the harbinger of what is to come. For when the tribes return, it will not be merely the return of a people, it will announce that the king is at the door. The 12 tribes of Israel continue to echo, not only in the past, but in the present and the prophetic future of humanity. For centuries, archaeologists have searched, theologians have studied, peoples have claimed descent. But in the end, the true question is not where the lost tribes are, but why God still speaks of them. The Bible does not waste words. If their names still echo through Scripture all the way to Revelation, it is because they represent more than blood. They represent legacy, identity, and a story that God never abandoned. Perhaps the tribes are not only on ancient maps, perhaps they are among us, blended among peoples, among ordinary faces, among people who do not even know where they came from, yet still carry in their spirit an ancestral calling. And what if you are one of those called? What if, even without biological inheritance, you are part of the people God is gathering in the last days? For the Apostle Paul wrote, "Not all who are descended from Israel are Israel, but the children of the promise are counted as offspring." This is not just history. It is a reminder that God is faithful, that He keeps promises even if they take millennia. What began with 12 sons of one man will end with a redeemed people, united under one name, under one king, and with one purpose. The prophecy is alive, the clock is ticking, and the names the world has forgotten are still written in the hands of God. Perhaps yours is too. May God bless you, and see you soon.